Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And there's a lot to controlling one's emotions, a lot to it, but you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is a very simple place. And we're going to talk about that, always starting from that simple, basic point of view and going up and down the scale to show you the cause and effect becoming cause of all the negative problems you have in your life. Now, I thought I'd start off this evening. I did announce it, and no new idea had popped into my mind to change it. I did announce that I'd talk about forgiveness. Is that all right with you folks? Because that's, you know, unforgiveness is an emotional factor. It's called judgment. And does anybody know what forgiveness is here? Do you really know what forgiveness is? What is forgiveness to you?
Well, I'm repeating your words, and since then...
You're the lady that had the exorcism the other night. Or a few weeks ago. You have a completely different face now.
Completely different, and I'm happy I can smile.
Okay.
And since I heard your words, they really stuck in my claw, and I understood them.
In your claw?
Well,
In your claw? You're not finished with your exorcism yet.
It's seeing somebody in the error they're in and not judging the error.
All right. Now, what's the
Seeing
difference
beyond
between discerning and judging? Does anybody know the
Oh,
difference?
yes.
What do you want to finish it?
Yes. When you discern, you see where they're coming from.
Yes.
And you speak with a truthful heart, and there is no condemnation in your soul. And you pray that they will hear you with your truthful
Can
heart.
anybody add to that a very missing ingredient?
Okay.
Yeah,
The word no condemnation is right.
it seems to me that that forgiving actually means that they don't know any better.
Well, they may know better.
Oh,
Then
they
what do
may
you do
know.
with that?
Well,
They may
They're-
enjoy it. They may love to hurt you. There are some people who can't help but hurt you, and they're waiting for someone to stop them. You know, not to beat them down and bash them to the ground, to stop them with forgiveness. And now, what is the key ingredient? It's amazing. I can sit here every night till kingdom come and tell you what it is, and it's such an elusive thing that it's hard to remember. What I've said about memorizing the spiritual things is that they're not memorizable. Is there such a word as that? Forgive me if there isn't. But the insights that I have, I cannot remember. Well, I can to some degree, but when I start to talk from my memory about what I said before, it feels like I'm chewing cud. I'm upchucking it and ruminating, and it feels like it's not new. It isn't. There's something wrong with that. It's not real. It's artificial. I feel false to myself. I have to speak to you out of something brand new every time. I can't look through yesterday's eyes. I can't look through tomorrow's eyes. I have to come from an ever-present reality within me, and then you can see where I'm coming from, and then you become a credible, respectable authority to other people. And the most noticeable evidence that you are a credible authority that people can respond to, and the other side that people can respond to, rather than the other side that people have responded to and are coming at you with that, see what I mean? That cruelty, is that you do not respond with resentment. Take that word, resentment, and plaster it on the middle of your forehead. Tattoo it somewhere and burnish it into your soul. Resentment. Resentment it comes from the Latin, oh, here I go, someone's going to get me for this, but it means, resenter, means to feel again, to feel twice, see? In other words, you can be angry, and then later on, you can think about what you're angry about, and that's resentment. You're sort of recalling emotion, and for some reason you hang on to that emotion, you see, to sustain your pride. And then after a while you learn to respond with resentment almost immediately. And resentment is not ordinary anger. I would just want to give you that difference between resentment and ordinary anger. Resentment has something to do with your pride. If someone attacks your kid and wants to kidnap him, naturally you come rushing out of your house. You know, you're angry. You want to stop that person. And it's all over with. I mean, it's natural anger. Just one cotton-picking minute, and all your juices are flowing. But resentment is something else. Resentment is almost a spiritual, it's almost a reuse of anger. Because you can sit in your house later on and think, that dirty swine, see? That rat, that dirty rat. And all of a sudden you start to think about what happened. The accident, maybe you had an accident and someone banged into you, and you were okay at the time. But later on you got the reactions. But that's when later on when you started to think about it, and you started to resent it, and then you start to resent everything. And that resentment supports something called judgment. See, now that judgment, it prevents you from discerning. Now, so I can look at a person doing something wrong to me or to someone else. There's no excuse to be resentful because he did something wrong to somebody else's kid, or be resentful because of what's going on in the world that you don't like. Always looking for a reason to fuel that judgment, you know what I mean? Looking for something wrong to resent or judge. But I can look at a person and not resent them. See that they do what is wrong. I can tell what is wrong, or something is wrong. Maybe I don't know exactly what it is. But I withhold judgment. Now, my heart can beat because it could be a dangerous situation. It could be scary. It could give a lot of pressures. My knees will knock. That doesn't mean to say I can have all the other physical reactions attendant to that moment. Fear, maybe, but no resentment. Now, there's something about resentment that sensitizes you to the world you live in. So the more resentful you are, the less responsive you are to what you know is right. And because you're judging. And judgment separates you from God, and you become your own God. And because you become your own God, you're guilty. Now, how do you deal with guilt? You deal with guilt by judging, resenting, to stay ahead of judgment. Because the moment you stop judging, resenting, passing judgment on everybody, the guilt of you playing God and judging everybody, hatred really, catches up with you, and you can't stand yourself. But since your pride is involved, it does not understand the mechanism or the protocol of doing about face and saying, oops, I'm sorry. Say, I'm sorry for judging. I'm trying to be you. I know that. See? What it does, because pride is involved, it's insensitive to instruction at a certain point until pain catches up with us and makes us, want to have an answer of some kind. The pain of our life is so bad because of our judgments and our angers, and because of the interreaction with other people, their reaction to us, our projection into them. But it makes us want to keep on judging, to stay ahead of the judgment. We get more and more sensitive to the wrongs of life, and we can't forget. And it's stuck, stuck in our craw. See? Any questions about this? You understand how this resentment and judgment goes? That if you can't forgive, you cannot forget. In other words, if you say, I forgive people, and you haven't forgotten it, then you haven't forgiven anybody. Does anybody not understand that? Anybody want to question me on this subject? The gentleman way in the... Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about resentment, but you know what? It's the distinction between you're saying that natural anger is okay.
There's a certain amount of natural anger. Now, I remember a long time ago, when I had a fight with my wife. Of course, I've had a lot of fights with my wife. But on this particular occasion, I had got to understand this thing called judgment and resentment. And some very strong physical force was necessary. Yes, I had to physically lift her and carry her, drag her across the room someplace, you know, to make sure she sat down and stopped being ridiculous. And then most men don't know how to do that without being very angry and upset, resentful. And they get their energy from anger. And once you start to respond to temptation and get your energy from anger, you then are degraded in the person's eyes that you are administering your justice to. See what I'm saying? Because your justice is not out of love. It is out of reacting with resentment. It's not the same thing that if you resent somebody, you are separated from the power to overcome them with love, overcome their evil or their craziness with love. It's a very subtle thing. Jesus was purported to have thrown the money changers out of the temple. It never said he was angry. It says he just threw them out. I mean, he says, you can't do this and you can't do that, and get the hell out of here. I'm sure he used some very choice words. But he took his motivation from his inner and not the devil or the outer. See, in other words, if you provoke me and I respond, I have lost my ability to reply in a constructive way. If you see what I mean, the Israelis are very good. That's how they defeat their enemy. They take the intimidation very well, and they move in their own time, and they move from their own strength, not as a result of in other words, animals, when you make a certain move, those animals will run or fight, and each animal is predictable in its behavior. That's how you can catch them. They only have certain choices. They're very limited. But the human being, once he's caught up in reacting like an animal, he forgets his other choices as a human being. As a matter of fact, once you respond with resentment and judgment, you are beneath the very thing that has created the ripple. Someone drops a ripple in the pond and the boats rock. Well, the rocking of the boat is the effect. Someone dropping the pebble in the water is the cause. And that's the reason why violent people are so effective and so dominant. And so they're always evolved to positions of power and authority, because they're able to cause resentment and make us incapable of responding, see, constructively and overcoming their evil with our good. Who understands that? Oh, I do. Ah. I forgot what your question was.
That just the distinction between resentment and natural anger.
Yes. Yeah, you want to fight with me? I'll take you outside. We'll have at it. But I'm not resentful. I remember times. Oh, I have to tell you what happened with my wife. I thought to myself, "Wow, I blew it this time." But I noticed that after the dust settled, there was no conflict, no guilt. My conscience didn't bother me. Something was okay. And she was okay. She'd responded to the strength. See, I can, if a woman is yelling and screaming and, you know how women can be sometimes. See, well, you can get hold of one and say, now, woman, use strength. Now, you can actually transmit, through holding a person, you can transmit hate, or you can transmit the strength of no-nonsense love. It's called tough love. It's hard to describe, but it's not an emotion. It's a power that is there when you give up resentment. It is not there when you have resentment. When you have resentment, the other person knows they've got you. They cannot acknowledge, and they tease you even more because it pleases them that you're the effect and they are the cause. Why do you think we have gang wars and violence? It's because people who have lost control, lost power, because they have become the victim of that sort of thing themselves, they go out and bash little old ladies up because they want to be the cause of somebody else's effect. And the fear gives them the illusion that they're in charge. So as long as you react with resentment and fear, because resentment and fear are connected to each other. No resentment, no fear. And remember that. To the degree that you can conquer your judgment, or resentment and judgment, because the resentment supports a judgment. And even though you see something wrong, it becomes a judgment and separates you from the power to overpower with good. You dig? Follow that? So I've remembered I was very good at martial arts. I'm not anymore, so you can come and get me anytime you want. But I will overcome you with my laser beams. I remember one time, and this is not bragging, I hardly ever lost a fight in my life because I was excellent at judo and jiu-jitsu, very good at it. And as a Jewish boy, you know, you're in Europe during the war, England, you had to defend yourself, and I learned. And I always stood up for myself. Many a time I've stood up for myself, but this particular time I was working at a store, and the young man, you know, he really, for some reason, he didn't like me, and he said he was going to wait for me and downstairs, and I warned him. I said, I'm a much better, you know, at fighting than he thinks I am, and if he knew how good I was, he wouldn't be so brave. I accused him of being a coward, because the only reason why he wanted to beat me up is because he thought he could win. If he didn't think he could win, he wouldn't do it, right? So anyway, I knocked the hell out of him, and I picked him up, no anger, and bought him a cup of coffee and apologized to him. See? And he became my friend. See that? And in other words, you have to be strong with your family. You may have to be strong with your wife. I'm not saying you have to knock the hell out of them. But if it's not anger, if it's only normal, healthy anger, but not resentment. Resentment changes where you're coming from. See? If you respond with resentment, you are inferior. In other words, your whole modus operandi is changed. You're subject to the temptation. You're subject to it. You're not the master of it. And that's the reason why you go to work and you get frustrated and resentful at work, and the boss takes it out on you, and he does his little mean little things, and he puts pressures on you and accuses you of things you didn't do. You become resentful. And you don't show it. You can't express it. But you judge him. You hate him. You come home and take it out on your kids. See? And now they have that resentment going. And you've altered their consciousness. And so on down the line. See? And I'm making a point as that resentment is a very special little thing that's very close to the soul.
Maybe if I relate a couple of experiences, it'll help clear it up. Now, like, I know what you mean by resentment. Like, for instance, years ago, this example that comes to mind, I was working for a guy, and he called me a jerk, right?
Well, maybe you were.
I was at the time. But, you know, I remember later on, you know, I working like 15 minutes, I thought, that guy called me a jerk, and I think about it, and I get angry, all upset again.
Yeah,
okay, now that's a
is.
resentment. I understand that, and you're saying that
They kill you.
right.
Resentment kills you.
I understand that. That's unhealthy.
Resentment comes out in so many forms, so many different mental conditions: depression, anxiety, guilt, frustration, violence, sickness, disease, maybe cancer, many other forms, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, just ulcers. It comes out in many different forms. If it doesn't come out on someone, it begins to affect you, you know, emotionally and psychologically.
Okay, now, but here's where I don't know if it's so much a confusion, but say, for example, someone stepped on my toe, or recently I had someone steal something from me, okay?
Yes.
And when they stole something from me, you know, I have more understanding now. I could see that the person was wrong, and I didn't get emotional about it. I didn't judge them. And when that happens, you know, I feel...
But you can't spend too much time explaining your question.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm saying, is I don't hardly experience... I even got in a fight about it.
Well, never mind. What's the question?
Isn't that anger that you talk about that's okay? Isn't that kind of a rare thing that's maybe only reserved?
No, there's hardly anybody in the world that understands it. You see, the anger, the healthy anger, the Christ-like anger, the throwing the money changes out of the temple anger, the strength that comes to overcome evil with good, the resisting of the evil and overcoming it with the good is, that kind of anger comes first from withholding judgment. If someone steps on your toe, you know, and maybe they mean it, maybe they don't. But you get a little flash in your brain, a little flash of resentment. You know the little resentment, it isn't anger. It isn't something that requires a great display of courage, like someone kidnapping somebody, you know, you're one of your family, and you're rushing out of the house and using all your strength. It is a little zzz in your brain. Who knows what I'm talking? A little resentment, a little electrical current, and then you can't forget. It keeps going round and round and round and round, and every time you think of it, you resent it. Every time you resent it, you milk it of more judgment. And every time you see the more judgment, it stays in your mind, and it preys on your mind. And you start to do weird things start to happen to you. You start to be depressed. You start to feel anxiety. You start to be afraid to go to work. You can't face that person. And you see that person coming down the street, you walk on the other side. Or he catches you and crosses over, and then you can't do enough bowing and scraping. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then you say, why did I do that? And you resent it again. You resent him yourself. See? When you judge others, you judge yourself. And it's in the scripture, judge not, or else you'll be judged. If you give up judgment of others, the judgment on yourself will disappear. Now, when you start to give up resentment, when the first thing you learn to do when you get up in the morning is you meditate, you become objective, and you learn to get into that space. And with that space, it carries with it a power to watch for the opportunity to overlook, like I say on my materials, on my cassettes. Watch for the opportunity, and for the novice, that's more important in the very beginning, to start watching, because most of our lives has been just the opposite of that. We look for the opportunity to be upset because we have become addicted. The judgment or the pride, it owes its life to something evil. It has to plug into something evil. It needs the temptation to exist. See, evil, if we respond to temptation, what have I said before? Don't we become a little bit like we have an imprint? The temptation has made us a little bit like itself. We've become the brainchild. Well, then a strange thing happened. The only life you have is to go on judging. Because when you judge, you have to have something evil to judge. See, and your whole life is based around something negative. But you have a negative existence, a reverse existence. You have a reverse polarity. Instead of living by faith and forgiveness, see, and your life revolves around responding to what's good in your heart, which says, don't respond. You know, revenge is mine, saith the Lord, I shall pay back. So instead of listening to that and trusting it, you yourself have become God, and you try to pay back. And you formulate all different formulas in your mind, and you become judge and jury and executioner, and you're hatching out these little plots. But you're always looking for something to be upset about, because you're addicted, because the life that you have, which originally originated through resenting someone, your father or your mother usually were the culprits. That's where the evil came through into your life. Now that it's sitting inside you, and having separated you from God to be your own God, the only way you can be God is to go on judging, like God does. Because that leads to the fear of judgment, doesn't it? Because of what it does to you. Should we talk about the fear of judgment? You can sit down now, because I'm going to give somebody else a question. Now, yeah.
One thought. Here's what I hear you saying, that if I'm understanding correctly.
I've taken it a long way, haven't I?
If someone stepped on my toe, okay, just say you stepped on my toe.
Withhold judgment.
Right, and that it
There's
seems,
no need
it seems
to be
to me
angry.
you're saying that righteous anger or natural anger that is not
If it's needed, it will come.
right. But
Mostly it isn't even needed.
right. That's what I'm getting at. It seems to me it comes only after you've been patient.
Right.
And had no.
Well, we got a break now for station, because we got just 2 minutes to round off.
Okay.
Thank you very much. In other words, anger, violent anger, isn't necessary. If you tell a joke, if someone tells you a rude joke, and you don't laugh at that rude joke, then the other person feels funny. Now, most of the times you laugh in order to not make them feel funny, because you want them to be your friend. See? So you feel obligated to laugh even if it isn't funny. You laugh, and then he got you because they're the cause and you're the effect. And that's how salesmen start to get to you and sell you things they shouldn't. But the thing is that for the most part, no violence is necessary. When it is necessary, it will not come. You'll have strength beyond your wildest dreams. I could tell you stories you wouldn't believe. Almost superhuman stories of what's happened because of that in times of great stress in my own life. I'm not going to brag right now, because I'll lose it. Okay? So most of the time, if you just look at a person without resenting them, without judging them, they'll cringe, because they'll start to see you not judging them. You're holding up a mirror. And with that, we'll continue on our subject on our next segment. You can listen to my program on radio, the same kind of program on radio, KIEV, 870 on the dial in Los Angeles at 9 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday. And if you want to write to us, many other parts of the country we have radio programs too. Please keep us on the air with your contributions and purchase the materials. Otherwise, if we don't get any response, we'll just have to pull the plug and try some other day when we got the seed money back again. So if you're enjoying this program and it's enlightening, it's your duty to help yourself. Thank you very much. Join us tomorrow night.
Part 2 is next.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And I've said last evening, we have the same audience here because we're taping all of these 5 sessions in one evening. But to the audience, it's last evening that the root of all of the problems of our life, 99 and 9/10% of them actually, come from a little pee-wee, little tiny, little dastardly little emotion called resentment. It's invisible and it is hidden and you can't see it, and it builds and builds and builds and becomes the corrupter of all the way everything we feel in our body is perverted by it. Our sexual appetites are perverted by it. Our thinking is perverted by it, turn negative. We start to doubt, to judge, to worry. Our appetites, our eating habits are altered by it. The way we see people is altered. We see enemies as friends and friends as enemies, because once the resentment takes hold and turns your mind around, the polarity of your thinking around, it makes you alien to what's right. All people who judge, resent, supports judgment, and it creates an opposition to what's, in other words, it turns your thinking around so that you're no longer thinking from above, like the mountain flowing, the river flowing the mountain to the sea, from within. That's cut off. The minute you start to be resentful and judgmental, the humility, the child of God, that which was created to express, to idealize the purpose of God on earth as it is in heaven, that person is cut off from being able to express that will. And something unholy appears, takes root in us, and is in conflict, in opposition to it. See? So that you can't think naturally positive anymore. You think in reverse, negative. You doubt instead of believe. You're mistrusting. Or you trust all the wrong people, because the wrong starts to seem right to you. Because the wrong is the basis of who you are. Therefore, any love, you can't find the love of God because you have to give up judgment. And when you give up judgment, you have to die, and then you'll be born again. When you give up emotion, see how I said that? Once the soul has realized that judgment has separated him from God, this emotion which supports judgment called resentment, it separates you from God to be your own God, then the pride of life, which is you playing God, has its spiritual root in that which has tempted it to be prideful and judgmental. So this was in your mother and father. You judged your father, you judged your mother, and lo and behold, what did you become? You took on the identity, the same spirit. You even grow up to beat up your kids like your mother beat you up or something like that, right? But you find yourself comforted, being attracted to all the wrong people because the wrong is right to you. And the wrong is the basis. Your whole life revolves around the wrong. You need the wrong for two reasons. One, to maintain your judgment. See? So you can judge the wrong and forget you're wrong for judging. Got it? How it's a vicious cycle. You need the wrong to reinforce the pride of judgment, to reinforce that kind of existence. The wrong is right. Therefore, your whole life revolves around being upset with things. Now, you can't go all through life being upset with things because it's too negative. You can't handle the pain. You have to have release. Now you look for love. But the people who love you, the people you're attracted to love and to love in return, are never the right people, because they are always the ones that agree that your wrong is right. Let's say you have an argument with your wife or your husband. You have a good knockdown, drag-out fight. And you get really mad, and you're crying. And the lady who's a divorcee, usually it's a divorcee, next door, you cry on her shoulder, and she says, there, that brute, you know, and starts to comfort you. So what's happened is that you have found a wrong that agrees that your wrong, your hatred towards your husband is right. That's how Hitler was able to control the whole nation. He gave the Germans, the Nazis, an inferior race to hate. Okay? And when they've hated and expressed their violence towards them, they were all feeling guilty. And therefore he would console them and remind them what wonderful people that they were right. He encouraged, in other words, his love made them hate even more. It gave them the right to judge. And so they judged. And it brought out that bestiality. And he acted through that bestiality. He put his will on earth as it is in hell. And he acted through the whole German race, see? Now that's how people can control you. They will give you something to hate. And they will pass gossip around about a certain person, and you start to judge them. But then you find yourself friendly or friends with a person who gave you that person to judge. And that person you're judging may be perfectly innocent. But once you've made your judgment, you can't call it back. Because once the pride of judgment is in you, you can't admit that you're wrong for judging. There are even people who've lent money or given money to charlatans, and they won't testify against them in court. Why is that? Because they feel sorry for them, you see, and they don't like to admit they've made a mistake. And their judgments can never be wrong, and therefore it's easy for the scoundrel to get away with it. You understand that? Okay, questions? Nothing. I've covered the whole ground so well. Oh, well, you can't ask questions. You're too far in the dark. You'll have to come on closer, closer. Come on down.
During meditation, Roy, I know you don't want to hear this too much, but you say you see your past resentments and guilts come up, you know?
Yeah.
Is this normal?
Yes.
It is?
I'll tell you why that is.
But these resentments are something that should be seen and shouldn't be looked down upon as being wrong.
No.
It's okay to see that.
Yes.
Okay.
The resentments that you have accumulate in you like sewerage, I don't know, like constipation. It just accumulates in you and fouls you up completely. And resentments are the means by which you reinforce the pride that is now become you. You're no longer a creature of the light, humble, subject to the forces of your beyond within, but you're now subject and created, recreated, if you like, in the image of that which has violated you and tempt you to fall to being the extension of whoever they are. So if people can violate you, do something very cruel to you, they put a little bit of themselves in you, and now you find that you are addicted to judging and creating a self, gathering an identity from judging. You see what judgment does? It is an embrace of temptation. When you're looking for something wrong because you are made of it. Is that clear? That you're actually made of this substance. It's earthy and sensual and evil, wicked, and it's an exact opposite of everything that was meant to be. And it loves lies. You make excuses, don't you? Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever made an excuse here? Who hasn't made an excuse? When you've reacted to pressure and temptation and done something wrong, your mind automatically settles the matter. In other words, it will give you, it will rationalize your own, this particular deed. See? It will give you a reason why it's right, why you did the right thing. I did it because. See? And you will find some way to make it noble and make it right and give yourself a reason. And that becomes your truth. That's how you become confused. So every time you react, it's because you need a fusion of life. You see, you need a little fix for the self that's gone wrong a long time ago. Because the only way you can exist is to connect through the resentment, to the very resentment, the very kind of emotion that created you or recreated you in its image a long time ago. You need that emotion to connect you back to the spirit that created you or recreated you, because without that you can't exist. You start to fall apart. You can't sit still. Haven't you noticed you can't sit still? You feel uncomfortable. You have to look for something to do, to involve yourself in. And it's always the things you involve yourself is in something upsetting. You look for intrigue. You look, everything goes wrong in your house. What do? You throw a monkey wrench in the works. You can't be happy very long. You've got to be upset. You have to create something to be upset about. If the wrong isn't there, you'll create it. So you'll make it happen so that you can connect to the source of your life through it by reacting to it. Because when you react, you literally connect to the source of who you are. And it separates you from realizing that it's wrong. That's how you reject reality, the truth, the conscience, the painful conscience. When you sit still, you can't sit still very long because the reality catches up and it will slay you in the spirit. You feel like you're going to die if you sit still. Who knows what I'm talking about? But that's what Christ says. You've got to die and be born again, because that's a self that's looking for that connection, looking for some sleazy, exciting, forbidden, upsetting, angry experience. So it can go on existing and displacing the real you, of course. And you identify with that and you excuse it. And your mind becomes confused. And those becomes your truths. Now, the way back, he's holding up questions, and I don't mind you stopping me, but I'm on a roll now. If you can stop me anytime you want to now. Okay, but every time you react, you are experiencing the wrong kind of life. And I have said before, you have to go through experience, and not experience go through you. You have to go through experience. Without that, otherwise you can't be in the world and not of it. You'll be of the world and in the world. You'll be gathering your identity like an animal who gathers his identity by interacting with experience, because that's how he reinforces what he is. He connects to his environment, and the environment, the energies, the life, the form, the directions, the ecology of it. The life forces enter in there, see? He reacts and runs, he reacts and fights. So it maintains its form and adds to it, perhaps. You follow? Everybody following? Okay? Yeah?
You know, it's funny how you can talk about the negative, but let's say you could have this perfect state of mind. How can you describe it? It seems like it's wordless.
Can't describe the perfect state of mind, because the perfect state of mind must describe itself. I will not rob you of discovering the perfect state of mind. That's all the positive thing. You understood that, don't you? Because I become your God.
Yeah.
I won't even give you a diet. If I give you a diet and you start to follow it, you start to follow the giver of the diet. You can't ever find your truth. That's why I always talk in the negative. I expose the negative and say, oh yeah, I see what's wrong. But a rocket scientist would do the same thing. He doesn't look what's right with his life. He looks what's wrong with his rocket. And when he finds what's wrong with his rocket, he says, ah, that's right. Why didn't I see that before? And he's happy because he sees what's wrong with his rocket. When you're trying to fix your car, you're happy to find what's wrong with it. Why aren't you happy to find what's wrong with you? Because your ego. You're built of wrongs. If you find what's wrong, you go cuckoo. See? You're always hiding from the light so you don't have to see the wrong. The wrong is what you're made of. See, now when you meditate, you become objective to that.
Right.
Now, this is the rule of thumb, is that you must be willing to face reality. If you cannot be willing to face reality, you cannot be giving up the resentments that make you your own reality, that build your pride, that keep you in the dark, that make you think you are the cat's whiskers, you know, the cat's meow.
Or
See?
excitability, like when you're achieving great success, you start
Yes.
getting, oh, I'm so excited.
You must give up excitement.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I'm flying in the face of custom.
Right.
They say, well, you know, wine, women, this guy doesn't like wine, women, and song. What's he living for?
That's correct.
That's what they say, don't they? Excitement's where it's at, man. Grab all the gusto you can, man.
But that's what the,
Have some weed, man. Because those people connect to their source of who they are by increasing their sensitivity. See? Then the more they increase their sensitivity, the more progressively they put themselves under it. And pretty soon they put themselves under it, into the earth. It's a life that leads to death, because they must be more sensitive. The more sensitive they are, the more they gather their identity. And the more that gathering of their fulfillment, they call it fulfillment, F-O-O-L, fulfillment. The fulfillment of fools is through excitement, because it reinforces the pride. They think they are something, but they're not. It also blocks out the truth of what they are, the truth of their foolishness, the truth of a wasted life. It takes away their anxiety. It anesthetizes their conscience. At the same time, it fulfills the foolish existence. Now, this is your life. Some people are compatible. Some people are so wicked. Most people are so wicked. I'm frightened to say what percentage. It's much more than 60%. It's probably like 90%. So wicked that if it wasn't for laws that grant freedom of speech, you know, First Amendment rights, etc., I would have been a dead man by now. Just by talking the way I'm talking, because I'm talking against a system. Because you are encouraged to react to drugs and to music and to art and to culture and to be excited and to be prideful. You're taught that but that's the way the Hitlers of our society, the secret Hitlers, the sweet Hitlers, the wicked Hitlers, they control you. You're all subject to various Hitlers, tyrants. Don't you know that you're subject to a tyrant and you're locked in by your judgment of them? They offer themselves up as a judgment. And the method of their madness is to make you judge them because you fall from grace, and then from that point onward you can never speak up to them because you're made of them. You'll bow and scrape because who you are will be from them. If you're a woman, you'll be attracted to a man that you hate. If you're a man, you'll be attracted to a woman that you hated like you hated your mother. She'll finish off what your mother began. Boy, that was a good laugh. Yes, ma'am, right back. Yes, a little bit if you don't mind, because you're so short. And I don't mean to be put down.
I just wanted to ask you, I'm confused about when you're meditating. When I'm meditating, sometimes I want to ask God something, and then I don't ask anything because
Don't ask anything.
then I just stay
Don't
in the
even
silence.
think that the scripture says it correctly when it says your Father in heaven knoweth what you need before you ask. Don't ask. Because
just,
you'll ask something stupid.
so then
See?
just silence is all you do, and
Just sit quietly and endeavor. The only thing you need to do is to endeavor to separate from your given or violated identity. To separate, because you're identified with you've so identified with this dark identity, this nature that sprung up in you through some early trauma, imprinting, that you've identified, excused it, defended it against the light. You see, because you with it both felt uncomfortable in the light, so it taught you how to do corrupt things, drink, smoke, carouse, fantasy, anything. It taught you how to get relief, how to get salvation from salvation, how to be shameless rather than guiltless. See what I mean, the difference? See the difference? And there are all kinds of shameless people out there teaching you how to be shameless and helping you to identify with them too. How to lose yourself by identifying with your body and your thoughts and your feelings and your flesh, so it takes away the pain, the sting of guilt. Don't you see, if you identify with your eyes and your ears and your feelings, that you fuse your soul with all your feelings, the sense of guilt disappears. The human side of you disappears, and then the inhuman side appears as an animal, a beast man, a devil's pawn, so to speak, see, with a different spirit and a different outlook on things, and that it's wrong to feel guilty, like they says in the song, you know, love is not ever having to say you're sorry. Is that right? That's right. Love is not heavy. Isn't that ridiculous? Love is. No, nobody questioned that. It's weird. See? So you're identifying with your flesh and slipping into your thought stream, and the thought stream and the feelings which give rise to your thoughts are engendered. They are put in. They impinge on your senses, and they explode into thoughts in your mind, and you have no original thoughts. You make the same excuses. See? Everybody makes the same excuses, have the same fantasies. And they murder and kill and rape and violate and leave their wives and you know, violate their wives and children and molest their kids. They two-time their spouses for all the same reasons. They get drunk for the same reasons. They snort for the same reasons. Exactly the same reasons. And yet they think they're unique. Everybody wants to be different. That was what makes them all the same. They all want to be different. You see a woman with a necklace, with putting some cheap jewelry on, looking in the mirror. Oh, isn't this different? Stupid witch. She wants to be different. She says, everybody's trying to be different. Everybody's the same, trying to be different. You want to be different? And realize that you're all the same. That you all have the same phobias and fears and guilts and excuses and reasonings, the same habits, the same fetishes and phobias, the same motives for doing wrong, the same fantasies exactly. And they all come from the same source, from below rather than from above. You see? Now we want to get rid of all this, don't we? We want to start hooking into a new thought system, but you can't do that because one thing prevents you: judgment based upon resentment. If you can realize anything in your life, if you had the power to wish anything and realize anything to change your life, excuse me, the thing that is most magical of all is realizing the magic of forgiveness. But this means, when you've understood it perfectly, it means that you've given up resentment. In a flash, you realize, my God, everything that's ever happened wrong to me, all the crazy things I've ever done, all the mad things I ever thought, all the flings and all the betrayals I've ever felt and done to other people, all the mad impulses I ever had, all the depressions and the guilt and the suicide, and the diseases and the multiple sclerosis and the cancer and the ulcers and the divorces, all the depressions, the hopeless fears, is all because I was separated from reality by judgment. And when that thought strikes you, when it thought strikes you, not because I said it, because suddenly it just, you're willing to see it. At last, through the pain of all your suffering, which has led you to searching, which led you to appreciating the things that I'm saying. Not everybody can appreciate it. You know, half the people out there saying, this guy's crazy. They're drinking their beer and they're laughing their heads off. See? Cursing me out. And writing letters to the station to get me cut off the station. They can't stand it because the light has come. See? And 2,000 years ago, the light came in a man. And look what it did. You ever wondered why they want to kill him? He didn't want to hurt anybody. He just wanted to teach everybody not to hate everybody. Resent not evil, he said. It's what he meant. Resent not evil. Overcome it with good. Otherwise, you translate it, resist not evil, you're going to give in to evil. Resent it, you don't resist it with resentment. Because if you resent it, it gets you. And then the evil gets into you, and the good can't come through you and overcome the evil. You're separated from the good, the power. Now, when you understand, that's the key. That is the whole key for you. It's the beginning of a whole change of thinking. And you'll never be the same again as long as you live, and you'll never be subject to the wickedness again, because everywhere people are trying to get you to resent, to upset you, doing mean, cruel, little, vicious, dirty, little backstabbing things. They can't help themselves because they're subject to the system. And the attitude must be, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, because they don't. They're totally unconscious of the cruelty that's coming through them. But the only way you make them conscious is not resenting it, or not reacting to it, or not judging it, and not being its victim, not having a lower consciousness than they have, so they feel like a king on a bigger mountain than you. Because you look inferior when you're the cause and you're the effect. Who are you? You're subject. But you show that you're not subject. You show that you're not subject, that you're coming from a different kingdom. And you hold it up, and they look at themselves when they look at you as if looking in a mirror. And it's all over but the music. You want to learn how to do that, ladies and gentlemen? Half an hour went pretty fast, didn't it? Viewers, please, if everyone understood what I was saying, everybody would be dropping their dope, and the insane asylums would open their doors, and all the problems of society would disappear, except AIDS. Talk about that some other time. Thanks for listening, and keep the program on the air with your support. Thanks for listening.
Part 3 is next, following this brief message.
The preceding lecture was produced by the Foundation of Human Understanding. For more information, write to the Foundation of Human Understanding at P.O. Box 1009, Grants Pass, Oregon 97526, or call 1-800-877-3227. Thank you.
The Foundation of Human Understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. I always said how to control your emotions, but you really have to control all of your emotions, because there's no such thing as a positive emotion. But that probably, I see all the TV sets switching off right now. Because emotion is the energy that keeps egos alive. It's the energy of pride, excitement, emotion, anger, love, hate. It's what makes the world goes round and round and down. You see? And we have here people this evening who are searching for a better way of existing. A new source of life or energy. It's an emotion of some kind, you know. Who was it? Christ said, you know, what did he say? It's if you don't lay down your life, if you don't lay down your life, you preserve your life, you'll lose it. But who loses his life, for my sake, he says, for the right reasons, will find that life. Now, they only have one word for life in English. Maybe existence would be a close simile. But in Greek, there are two words for life. One has a very specific meaning. One is animal life. You see, life of the animal. And the other one is spiritual life, zoe and suche. So if you lay down one life, the animal life, add another word to it, ego animal life. It's the stimulation to the ego spreads the animal over your bones. It awakens the animal and diminishes the guilt of the animal. And the pride of life begins to grow and wax very strong, and it becomes addicted to emotion, to evolve the animal as if that was the man. And the process of reacting to emotionally to something is the renewing of that sort of spirit, the prideful spirit. Because the reaction to this separates you from responding to that. There's the spiritual life within you, and then there's the life of the ego animal that you now have inherited, and the pride likes to think that's the way we are. And we are products of evolution, and we fancy ourselves evolving to become some kind of God, some kind of good. And of course, that's all we can see, that we're evolving some kind of good, because we feel like every time we react to some kind of stimulation or temptation, we do feel renewed. We do feel like nothing condemns us, especially when we're condemning everybody else. Right? So you see, the life of the flesh and the spirit of pride evolves by reconnecting emotionally through excitement of love and hate. Lots of excitement, all kinds of exciting new car, exciting new girls, exciting money, exciting this, everything got to be exciting, because it keeps you forgetful of reality. It keeps reminding you that you are an evolving being, creature, God coming into your own. See, it's a lie. It keeps the lie in place. Well, it does two things at one time. It helps you block out reality and makes you feel like you're coming more alive and fulfilled in that life. There is a point in our lives when you get to be about 25, 30 maybe, 35. It depends on how stuck you are in your various exciting religions and exciting booze and exciting women. And all of this seems so natural. But in some of us, this can't go on forever. Because we begin, all of a sudden, all the things that we enjoyed, let's say you wake up one morning and everything up to that point has been fun. Exciting new cars, new women, race cars, booze, sex. You're really having a great time. One morning, am I right? One morning you wake up and everything that you enjoyed, all the emotions, all the excitements, all the rages, all the judgments, all of a sudden it affects you in the opposite way, doesn't it? Who understands what I'm talking about? There are some people it doesn't affect in the opposite way. They're totally addicted and committed to death. See? To life that leads to death. They're so prideful, there's just no other way but that. And Roy Masters, a man like Roy Masters coming on the screen or radio, I mean, this is devastation, because they got a little bubble and I'm busting it. You can't repair bubbles, you know, when they're broken. See, they've been escaping from the truth on the inside, and here I am on the outside. They can't. That's why they killed Christ. Why did they kill him? Because he was persecuting them. They weren't persecuting him.